Hello and welcome to this video on moral hazard. So in this video we're going to look at what is meant by moral hazard and then explain how moral hazard can lead to market failure. So what do we mean by moral hazard? Moral hazard is when individuals have incentives to alter their behavior when their risk or the consequences of bad decision making is borne by others. So we have a split here between the decision maker and who bears the consequences of this decision. Famously, as Paul Krugman put it, moral hazard exists in any situation in which one person makes a decision about how much risk to take, while someone else bears the cost if things go badly. So we're going to be looking at a couple of examples in particular. We're going to be looking at how insurance policies decrease the incentive to take care of your possessions, and how governments promising to bail out loss-making banks can encourage banks to take greater risks. But what conditions do we need to be in place for moral hazard to exist? Well, two conditions. One, there is information asymmetry, which means the producer and the consumer don't have perfect information, don't know everything there is to know. One party knows more than the other party. And the second condition is that we need some sort of contract that ties the behavior of the two different agents. So one agent is making a decision and the other agent is contracted to have to deal with the consequences. So let's start off with our first example, which is to do with insurance. And here is our scenario. So let's start down in the bottom left hand corner. So when your bike is uninsured, it has, let's say, for example, a 10% chance of getting stolen. Therefore, if the bike is worth £1,000, the cost of insurance will be based around £100. There's a 10% chance of getting stolen, and so the expected value of the bike, or the expected value of it being stolen, would be £100. However, once you take out insurance, you're now going to be more risky with how you look after your bike. So the bike may now have a 30% chance of getting stolen. Therefore, if the insurance firm has only charged you £100 for your insurance premium based on the 10% risk, it's going to lose money. This could lead to no insurance companies thinking it's worthwhile insuring anything, because if they do, people will just start being reckless with their possessions. So it can lead to a missing market. The insurance firm doesn't want to insure bicycles because people change their behavior once they're insured. There is the existence of this moral hazard, and so it might lead to a valuable service from society's perspective not being provided. We can also look at an example in terms of banks and how they behave. Now, banks play a crucial role in society. If you imagine what would be the case if we didn't have banks, we'd have to keep the money at home under the mattress, we wouldn't be able to pay using debit cards, we wouldn't be able to take out loans. They're really vital to the functioning of modern society. So what might be the moral hazard here? Well, we have banks, and they might take risks through trying to pursue profit by loaning out money. Now, the excess risk taking might lead to the banks making losses. But can we afford to have a society where banks lose money and shut down? No, the government can't allow banks to go bust because of the impact it will have on society, so the government bails out the banks. Now, if you're running a business that you know if things go wrong, you're going to get covered by a government bailout, that's going to encourage risk taking. So risk taking, more likely to lead to losses, which is more likely to lead to bailouts. But the existence of bailouts leads to more risk taking. So here we have a problem where, through moral hazard, our bank system or this particular industry is not likely to be run efficiently or effectively from society's point of view. It's going to cost a lot of money to the taxpayer, and we're not going to get really the best outcome. So here again, moral hazard, the bank's risk taking, the cost of that being borne by the government, a different party, might lead to market failure. There are lots of other examples that we might use. First one is fiscal and monetary union. Now, fiscal policy is to do with government spending and taxation. So you might have a government, maybe the Greek government, that is spending a lot of money and racking up a lot of debts. Now, if the Greek government was to go bust, was to run out of money, whose responsibility is it to prevent that from happening? It's partners in the monetary union, so it's other countries that share the euro, for example, Germany. So Greece can take the risk, but Germany can bear the consequences. So this might lead to irresponsible spending, borrowing and spending by governments. Politicians will often make spending promises as they come towards the end of their electoral cycle. So the day before I leave office, I might promise everybody in the country a free $1,000. Now, whose problem is that? It's actually it's not my problem, it's my successor's problem. The president or the prime minister that's going to come after me, it's their problem once I've committed to making this spending promise. So I don't bear the consequence for my action, and so I'm not likely to behave in a particularly rational or desirable way. This can often happen in management situations. Managers may want to do something very risky with running the business because ultimately they know it's not their business, it's the shareholders' business, and the shareholders are going to bear the cost if something goes wrong and the business shuts down. And finally, we might look at health insurance. So once I have health insurance, I might start drinking and smoking like a chimney because I know that I can be more risky because I'm covered, the cost of any treatment will be covered by my insurance company. So I might behave in a very different way that's not really desirable because the consequences of my actions are being covered by the insurance company. So these are all good examples of where moral hazard can lead to undesirable outcomes and so market failure. So how might we deal with this issue of moral hazard and how it causes market failure? Well, a number of different suggestions. We might build in incentives for good behavior. So for example, I might get a discount on my bike insurance premiums if I don't make a claim for a stolen bike. So this incentivizes me to look after my bike better, even though it's insured, because I know it will reduce the cost of insurance. We might penalize bad behavior. We might make it illegal for people to take out health insurance and not declare any previous illnesses that they've had, so that the health insurance company has a more full set of information when deciding how much to charge for insurance. We could maybe split up banks into lots of smaller little banks so that they're not too big to fail. The government doesn't have to bail them out, and in fact if one went bust through reckless and risky lending, it wouldn't have an impact on the banking sector as a whole. We might also try and make managers perform more in line with the views of shareholders by linking their pay perhaps to the share price of the company. So in this video we've looked at what is meant by moral hazard and looked at some examples that explain how moral hazard can lead to market failure. That's it. Thanks very much for listening.